It's 8 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our meeting on July 14th. I will first ask for approval of the agenda, unless there are any.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as is.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Atul. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Same for the consent agenda, unless there are any modifications to that.
I have none. I can make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on June the 23rd and also the claims for July the 14th.
Second.
I should have stated this right up front. I have one minor modification. Under the minutes, under the portion where each commissioner was indicating their priorities, the second bullet point under mine had to do with the Watershed Management Board, and it says and pending adjudication. I'd like to just revise that to say pending potential adjudication. So if we Mike, if you could amend that motion to just accommodate that one change. I'm sorry I didn't bring that up first.
That's fine, Jeff, I will do so.
Okay. It's been,
And
and so with that minor modification, is that still John, is that still a consent agenda? Can we make that, or do we have to pull that down and then take them independently?
You really should.
You really should take it down since you're modifying it.
Yeah. So
But,
why don't we take
Just two motions to approve each at this point.
two motions? Yeah. So we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 And now I'll take a motion to approve the claims of July 14.
I will make that motion.
I'll second
Go
it.
ahead, Atul.
I'll let that go to Atul. So Atul made the motion. Mike seconded to approve the claims of July 14. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There we go. Thank you very much. Move on to old business, approval of the policy regarding commission meetings during phase 2 and or phase 3 safe restart.
John, do you
Steve?
want to take that?
Sure. So commissioners, here's the situation had been that, well, I'll give you a background. You're at Whatcom County, as much of the state is under phase 2, which does not allow government offices to be open. It does allow socialization and gatherings in 5 or less. The governor's authority is to impose these restrictions on interactions. The governor's authority to suspend laws is limited. We've talked about this before. So when the governor has suspended the Open Public Meetings Act, for it to, that suspension to extend, it requires the approval of the House and Senate, State House and Senate majority and minority leaders. The leadership, the 4 leaders, could not come to agreement on the extension and would limit those to 1 to 2 week extensions. So what was happening with timing for the PUD was that the extension, the packet to be publicized in your normal course would be a Wednesday generally, and the extensions were expiring on Wednesday night. So we wouldn't know if you would have the suspension of the in-person meeting requirements or not. And it put the PUD staff in a scramble as to what would happen on the following Tuesday. What's to be publicized? Are you setting up Zoom meetings? Do you have to reorganize? And how do you deal with the collision of a phase 2 requirement if you're obligated to provide in-person meetings? So talking with staff, we wanted to get the commission's direction on how you would want to proceed during phase 2 open public meeting acts if the governor and legislative leaders did not extend the suspension. We had a little bit of clarity in a press release last week with the most recent extension. Rather than 2 weeks, they did roughly 4 weeks to the end of July. And in the press release, it stated that those counties in phase 3 may have in-person meetings. So the governor provided some clarity that his intent is that as long as the suspension of the Open Public Meetings Act is in effect, phase 2, you are not to meet in person and just virtually. So having said that, we're now under a longer extension by the legislative leaders approved to the end of August, but it still would provide some guidance what your intention would be regarding the conflict of if the legislative leaders do not extend the suspension of the Open Public Meetings Act, but we're in a phase 2 where you're not allowed to have open government buildings or have gatherings of 5 or greater. So the staff felt there should be a commission direction. My recommendation to you would be to put the public and staff safety first and risk an open meeting violation if the legislative leaders did not grant the extension. You have a healthy, safe workplace, and the last thing you'd want to have is to have 2 or 3 commissioners and a couple key staff all of a sudden in a meeting, socially distanced, maybe a member of public has attended, and then there be a spread of COVID and you have key staff and commissioners affected, and you have L&I issues as a result of different things. So there's a potential collision, as I said, of the Safe Start phase 2 if the Open Public Meetings Act suspension is not extended. And again, these were only coming in 1 week or 2 week extensions when we were put this agenda together, but now it's been extended longer than it had been to 4 weeks. So it gives us a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions?
No, I think the policy as you have put together makes a lot of sense. I mean, it accommodates what we're now doing in phase 2 and anticipates how we would operate safely in phase 3. There are a couple of blanks there in terms of number of occupants we could have in the room. I would just delegate that to staff to determine how many chairs we could have in our meeting room at a safe distance. So it seems to be in line with where we might be going under a phase 3 order.
That's right. Part of that blank was we don't know where the phase 3 would be until we got the direction. Would they be at the 5 limit? Would it be a 10 person limit? 20? We don't know. So I let the staff make that determination now, and we'll finalize the policy and present that back for your policy notebook.
So you're not suggesting approval today then, or taking action?
I think you can prove today and defer the staff to make that decision, and we'll publish it back to you in the final resolution for signature.
All right. Atul, Mike, any comments on this?
No.
I understand what John is saying here, and I understand that, you know, what we're trying to achieve here. And I do support, you know, as John said, the public and staff, as well as ourselves, you know, trying to stay healthy. So I will support this. Yeah, I can support it.
Okay, great. And I do want to we all appreciate how seamlessly these digital meetings are running, thanks to staff for making certain everybody has access to this information. Well, with that, I'd be glad to accept a motion.
So yeah, I do have one quick comment in that I was expecting Commissioner Murphy to make it. I respect Commissioner Murphy's prior communications about the desire to, at the time that's appropriate, to move to in-person meetings as soon as that's reasonably possible. And I realize it's not yet. Just recognizing that, and you know, the governor doesn't worry about that's the social lubrication aspect, because that's not his job in the executive order capacity. But you know, we are running a risk of becoming a little bit more disconnected, doing everything online. And let's just all keep that in mind. And maybe there's ways now that this is going on a lot longer than has happened in the and certainly that we would have ever predicted, or there's no precedent for it. So maybe we should be thinking of innovative ideas to how to maintain greater connection and contact among the staff and the commissioners and all of that. So that's something. I have no specific action item on that front, but let's all think about that. And I encourage staff as well as us commissioners to figure out how to maintain good communication and connection with each other, and then of course with the public as well, because this is getting to be a real problem, not being connected. Thank you. I'll make the motion to approve staff's recommendation for policies for communication in phase 2.
I'll second.
Would that be phase 2, phase 3?
Sorry, phase 3.
Yeah.
And I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the policy as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I just on that motion, Commissioner, I understood that you're going to defer to staff to fill in the blanks in section 2.
That's correct. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody. So let's then move on to approval of the special meeting agenda for next week.
Commissioners, in preparation for the all-day session next week, the 21st, we have been developing the draft agenda, and we sent that out to you in the packet. I would, as we have the discussion on this, I would like to suggest a couple of minor changes that from the version that you have now, and that is the first one would be under broadband. The opening presentation, which I was planning on doing, rather than call on or identify what some of the other PUDs in the state are doing now, we would include that in our general overview of broadband, our PUD's authority, what some of the other PUDs are doing. But I also add to that sort of a lessons learned, what we feel we have identified as to what we would have done differently. And it is not nearly as much as to say, here are the mistakes that the PUD made, but it's been a number of years. The whole broadband fiber optics environment has really changed, and so we can look back at what we were attempting to do, over 16 years ago now, and say, how would we do it different? And somewhat based upon, what other PUDs and other ports are doing now. So that's the first thing. And then the second is under broadband. We'd like to add back in, we had some discussion with a gentleman by the name of Stephen King. Christine Grant actually brought him to our attention. We had a online call with Stephen. He represents a company called Mind Global. They're a investment patient capital group that has an interest in building fiber optics networks around the Northwest. And we'd like to give him just 10 or 15 minutes. And what we do is place him in that spot right after John Humphrey. Then I think that's all I had right now. We have, as of yesterday, I've had a commitment from a gentleman from Colorado to speak on the 21st on the hydrogen project. So we don't expect any change there. And then just to identify very specifically in the City of Bellingham presentation, we expect to have Renee LaCroix, who is the Assistant Public Works Director of Natural Resources, and then Eric Johnston, the Public Works Director. I had a good discussion with both of them last week, and they're very interested in providing a presentation on the city's climate action goals and so forth. So, but that's those are the changes that and any updates that I had at this time.
Steve, who will be presenting on behalf of the Port of Bellingham?
Right now, it'll be Gina Stark, and I'm not sure yet. As of yesterday, I had a discussion with Don Goldberg, and I think he might be on also to talk more a little bit about what the ports, the group of ports from Whitman down the Columbia Valley or Columbia River, and then up and down the west side of the state, what they've been doing. So, but that's, as far as I know, that it'll be Gina for sure.
Okay.
And then on the Port of Skagit and Skagit PUD, right now, I'm having a discussion with the representatives from the Port of Bellingham, the Port of Skagit, and the Skagit PUD tomorrow morning to finalize their presentation. So.
Okay, great. And can you tell me what John Humphrey, who he is and what he will be covering?
Atul, maybe you might be better.
Yeah, so bringing in the gentleman from Mind Global, maybe we can give John 10 minutes and the gentleman from Mind Global 10 minutes, so as well, instead of 15 for each, and give us more room for conversation and wrap up, because I want to make sure that we have time to discuss.
Sure.
The gentleman, Steve already spoke about the gentleman from Mind Global, I believe. John Humphrey goes back about 7 or 8 years with advocating for Dig Once policy at the city, at the county, and at the PUD. Most of his efforts have been involved with the city. And he's a strong community advocate for fiber optics, broadband, for broadband delivered through fiber optics. And I believe he's written to the commission before, and I believe also he has been involved in many public hearings on the subject. So he asked for the opportunity to present to the PUD on the subject.
And what will the nature of his presentation be then?
I think he'll focus very much on Dig Once, and he also has some comments regarding the COVID crisis and serving schools.
Okay, and tell me a little bit more about Mind Global.
Mind Global is my understanding is a group of investors that are looking to develop, along with public agencies, broadband fiber optic networks in areas like Whatcom County and urban rural areas where where these areas have been identified as being underserved or unserved, and they have a strong interest in developing what they are calling public assets, that they would come in and actually build the system, operate it for several years, build up the customer base, and then sell it to public agencies, nonprofit agencies to own and run thereafter, thinking that the public agencies that have an interest in doing that may not have the capital or the opportunity or the potential for doing that, where the private investors have this, have a willingness to provide their patient capital to make that initial investment. So,
okay, sounds good. We will. We have a packed agenda here, so I would just implore all of our speakers to probably be mindful of that. The number one goal is to be able to get through this in a timely manner and get all this information. So making certain that everybody has vetted their presentations and that we'll want to leave some time, I suspect, after probably each of these presentations for questions and comments. So someone will be delegated as timekeeper, I would imagine.
Well, yes, and we're going to have staff, Ann, and then Mike McComber on staff acting as, quote, moderators in terms of, screen sharing, in terms of questions and answer period, so that we can moderate, through chat room or live, questions
Great.
and answers. So,
Yeah.
hopefully we'll be able to manage this in an effective way, and also give an opportunity for the public that is attending that day, that they'll have a valid opportunity for participation. What I've told all the speakers so far is that the time slots that we have provided to them include question and answer period. So it'll really be up to us to moderate that, to keep the time frame tight. So
I'm fully confident we'll have all the technology ready to go.
Yeah, and you guys have our support to keep everybody on schedule.
Yeah.
Just power up your batteries.
Yeah. Yeah, have an extension cord ready. I would maybe suggest we sandwich in a 10-minute break somewhere in the morning session and somewhere in the afternoon session, if we can squeeze that in. But really looking forward to this discussion.
And I do think, in my discussion with several of these speakers, they don't think that they'll need more, what we've really provided is, the 45-minute slots are based upon a 30-minute presentation and a 15-minute question and answer period. And, a couple of the speakers are saying they don't think that they're going to need that half hour. And
Okay.
so hopefully it'll provide an opportunity though for the commissioners, to ask questions and dialogue with some of the presenters. And what we've told people is that, at the end of each of these, sessions, the broadband as well as the energy, we've got this wrap-up session or time that we hope that all the presenters will stay on with us, so that you all can, ask some follow-up questions if you feel that it's valuable. So
Great. Should we identify some times in both the morning and the afternoon session for public comment? Should we schedule that in, or had you intended that to occur during that wrap-up period, Steve?
I did not intend to have that, that participation level, but we can certainly, I think that it would be, if you want to do that, I think that it would be appropriate to have that at those two wrap-up sessions, because
Okay.
I don't think it would be valuable for the panelists, the presenters and the commission to have that public input that could lead to, question answers, dialogue back and forth during the time of the presentations.
Yeah.
What we expected and hoped is that these discussions and presentations and the wrap-ups will really provide an opportunity to educate and inform you, as well as get the information out to the public, obviously. But the follow-up to this session, this all-day session, we expect will be that on the 28th, when you'll have a follow-up discussion on priorities and budget. So
yeah, I think that's a good point. We've got a lot of content to cover. So time is probably going to be our enemy. I think maybe the way that we would take public comment and questions is, as you had mentioned, through the chat or the Q&A, and then those could be curated and brought forward as questions by one of the commissioners. I think that probably would be a better way to manage that on this day. Atul, Mike, do you have any comments on that?
I do. Well, I shouldn't say comments on that. I'd like to ask Steve if those who are presenting will be bringing their a packet for us. I like to write down what people say, and if I have to spend all my time trying to chase what they're saying and writing it, it takes away from me, to really focus on them. So are they going to present us a packet, each one? So that
Well,
way,
they will, my expectation is that each one of the presenters will have, a slide presentation or some sort of visual presentation as part of their discussion. And then we will have that available, as part of the recording of the meeting. And then we can follow up and get hard copies of each of their presentations. I did not request that they send out prior to the 21st hard copies, of each of their presentations. So
My sense, Mike, in talking to several of these presenters and preparing for this, is that they're going to be fine tuning their presentations probably right up until the moment that they give it. So getting it in advance, I think, is going to be maybe a bridge too far. But like Steve said, I think it would be valuable to have that afterwards.
and that's fine. I'll just write as fast as I can, and I try to keep up. And because a lot of my questions could come from, their comments, and I need to write these things down, but I'll do the best I can to keep notes for myself.
well, and Mike, you're planning on being here at the commission room that morning or that day, aren't you?
That is correct.
I mean, I think that, and I'm planning on being here, also in the room with you, 6 feet away, of course, but I think we can help you, moderate some of those questions that you may bring up.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, on that subject, I was intending to be in the room as well, if that works. I know we have a limit of 5 people, so I want to make sure we have enough room for the staff that's going to be required to be there. So if you'd like me to do this remotely, so both Ann and Mike can be in the room, I'd be glad to do that.
No, I think we can. I think we can manage that, Commissioner.
Yeah, Mike and I don't need to be in the meeting room.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could. I mean, if all 3 of you commissioners want to be in the commission room that day, we can make that work.
Atul, what is your desire? Are you intending to be remote?
I could do either.
Okay. Would you prefer to be in the room? That way it would benefit staff to know how to plan accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a certain advantage for the 3 of us to be together. We haven't been in the same room, so I think, yeah, I'd be on board with that.
Okay. So
With commissioners being present, I would recommend, and the public not being present, but virtual, I would recommend that you make space for 1 person from the press, should the press like to be there. That's within the Public Records Act. When you've had a meeting that's not capable of functioning, at least, and public's excluded for that reason, then you allow a press to attend. So I would at least, if the 3 of you, and then it's Steve, and then the 5th would be a member of the press, should a member of the press want to attend. So the other thing I would comment on is that on the agenda, if we're going to encourage public comment through the chat function, as well as at a 11:30 to 12 wrap up and before and after that, you make a note of how to do that, or direct public comment also to be made through the chat function. And the commission staff will be monitoring that, so communications can be fed back.
I see Mike on the screen. He has some comments on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't know if we mentioned that even when you're in the room, we need the commissioners to remember to bring their iPads with them in order to make this work. You'll be using those as your video, although we will be using a separate audio system for your audio.
Right.
And then also, as far as the chat functionality, we have that disabled right now for our entire organization, which so we'll just need to remember to enable that on our Zoom account in order for that function to work for that particular meeting. Those are the only comments I have.
The other
Very good.
comment that I'll address with Steve between now and then, but anticipate, commissioners, there may be a mask requirement to be in the building. So that you may be on the screen, but if you're in the building, you may be wearing a mask.
Okay.
I would expect
For
that.
me, it would be a hassle to do that for 8 hours. So I'm
Okay.
based on what I'm hearing with a need for including a press person. I think maybe it's better for me to stay remote, and maybe the two of us need to stay report because 2 is a quorum, right?
I think the issue is not the quorum, it's that public isn't attending. And so we should allow a press there. If you know, the circumstance is if 2 people are present at a meeting before and after, you'd want to see at least the press be present. And you're
Yeah.
all going to be wearing masks during those 8 hours in the government building.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm going to the grocery with a mask, but I don't like wearing it for 8 hours.
John, I'm glad you brought that up since I'm probably going to be acting as moderator on a lot of this. That would be a cumbersome requirement for me to wear a mask while doing that. So I think I will probably do this remotely as well.
Okay,
Well, I'm glad we had this discussion.
yes.
Yeah. Good up, Jeff.
Good.
And the same would apply if it's 1 commissioner and 2 or 3 staff members only in the room, there would be masks being worn by the rules as I read them. So, because you're in a common space. So Mike and Steve, you know, consider that if you're going to try to attend in person, you'll be having a mask on in that common space.
If there's more than 1 person in the room.
Yes.
Mike,
And just a reminder, and I'm not trying to discourage anyone who wants to be in the room, but utilizing Zoom, it is actually much easier if everybody remains separate in their own rooms, buildings, whatever. So just food for thought on that.
You mean as
Okay.
far as communications infrastructure?
Yes, I mean Zoom's designed to be like what we are right now, where we're all in our own spaces. When you have multiple individuals in a room together on Zoom, that's when more complexity comes in. In example that I used, or in an example of having to have that separate audio equipment, although using individual videos, that's an added layer of complexity. Zoom was designed for this physical separation like this, and it simplifies it so much more if we maintain that actual physical separation. But again, not to discourage that if the commissioners, Steve, whoever, want to be in the same room together.
great.
I would just offer,
As long as you guys are okay with at least 4 hours of rooster noise in the background.
following Mike McCumber's comments, I would just offer, I was in a Zoom public hearing in a examine hearing in Pierce County, and they had 3 county officials all on one Zoom account, and you could not tell who was speaking when.
Mm,
The audio was so poor.
yeah. Well, in this case, both the tool and I would be remote. Mike would be in the room along with Steve. So that might start to isolate some of these issues. But as Mike pulled up or indicated, that probably not as seamless as being in a separate room. Mike.
Yeah, and as far as the audio quality is going to be, it's going to be great. I've already, Paul, Aaron, and I, or my IT colleagues, have already tested, and Ann have already tested the audio equipment. So as far as the audio quality is going to go, that's going to be fine. It's just an added layer of complexity. And like John said, really, you won't. If somebody has, so say somebody's on a mobile devices act different than a computer. So if somebody has their mobile device on speaker view, for instance, we have the way we're going to use the audio equipment in order to pick up high quality sound and have multiple people in the same room. What's going to happen is we have basically a Zoom dummy account that's acting as the audio for you guys. So each time you guys are speaking, if you're in the same room, it's going through that dummy Zoom account. So it'll look like, so if somebody has their speaker view on their mobile device, what's going to happen is every time, so Mike Murphy speaks, it's going to, the view on that person's mobile device is going to go to the dummy screen, and it's just going to say PUD Whatcom, PUD number 1 of Whatcom County. That goes the same for if Steve speaks. So people, unless people are very comfortable with Zoom and they swipe their phone so they can see gallery view, so they can see all the speakers at once, it's going to look, the individual who's speaking that are both in the same room, it won't go to their screen automatically like it is right now because we're all using our own individual microphones, if that makes sense. I don't know if I confused anything or if that actually makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, thank you. Thanks, Mike, for getting this all set up and ready to go. And Steve, thank you for putting the agenda together. There's a lot of moving parts here and a lot of people to coordinate. We'll make certain we maintain a certain amount of flexibility as we go through the day, but it looks like we have a great lineup and it should be a good opportunity for education and discussion.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, this
I
well thought
appreciate-
through.
Yeah, I appreciate, I mean, it's been the last week or so, it's just been really interesting for me to have communication with, with all the presenters and the expectations and how cooperative they've been and amenable to speak to the issues that we've asked them to speak to, and at the same time, that they're trying to do as well as they can as to really provide that education opportunity that day. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see on the 22nd, hopefully we'll be able to look back on the 21st and say, yep, that was successful. So
Nailed it. Mike and Sewell, any additional comments to the agenda before we move on?
No, but I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for the special meeting to be held on the 21st of July between 8:30 and 4:30.
All right. Atul?
And I just want to clarify, I think there was just one minor modification to the agenda by adding a speaker and adjusting time limits as was discussed. Right?
As this modified as discussed.
Yeah.
Would you offer a second to that motion?
Yeah.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for our special meeting on the 21st as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Sure.
We're going to move on to new business now and to the subject of branding, which I'm very excited about. This is something that we have been working on for the past several months. And I'm pleased to introduce Heidi Dykman, who's a graphic designer that I've known for, nearly 20 years, and we've done a lot of work together. And so she has been working with us to come up with a new and revised identity, I guess, for the PUD. Heidi is particularly skilled and she's a good listener and able to kind of take those thoughts and put them into graphic form. And that's something that I appreciate very much. As you know, I've talked about from time to time, I felt that it would be a good time for us to take a look at updating our identity for the PUD. We're a much different organization than we were 20 years ago, and on the cusp of, I think, some very progressive things as well. So we're different now. We're going to certainly be different in the future. And I think it's important that our identity and our logo reflects who we are. Not that we're flying off in some progressive directions. I think we still want to maintain an identity of the stability and the efficiency that we operate with now. But I think we have a good opportunity to kind of update our presence in the community and reflect who we are as an organization. So over the past several months, Steve and Ann and I have been working with Heidi to begin to look at what that might mean. And before we got too far down the road, we wanted to include you, Mike, and Atul in the discussion to kind of show the progression of how things have evolved. So the presentation today, what we've asked Heidi to do is broken into 3 parts. The first part has to do with what are the identifiers, the words that best describe the PUD and who we are, and in a very simplified form. The second part then goes into the discussion of what a logo might look like, you know, starting with what some of our other colleague organization PUDs around the state use for their identity. And then looking at the options that we started to play around with and then refine in a certain direction. And then the third part has to do with, well, if we did go in this direction, how would that be applied across our various platforms like letterhead, business cards, trucks, vests, hats, and the like. So at each of those points, we will stop for discussion and input and insights. You know, the intent obviously is not to take any action today, because I think it's important for these things to ruminate and simmer, but to just bring everybody up to speed with some of the work that has been done so far, and then depending on the discussion, take action at a future meeting. So if there are no questions before we get started, I would like to introduce Heidi Deichmann from GoGo Design. Good morning, Heidi.
Good morning. I should ask, can you hear me well?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
Sound great.
In all of these meetings, I've used many different platforms, so I'm not, you know, I don't know Zoom really well, so I'm glad you can hear me. Yes, we've been working for a while on a new PUD logo, and I think the process has gone really well. We had a short pause, but now we're back into it. And yes, Jeff and I have been working together for a long time. Our first assignment together was to rework the RMC logo almost 20 years ago. And so that's kept our relationship going and through a lot of different seasons. So I am going to share my screen with you and we'll get started.
This is a good dry run for our special meeting next week.
Yes. Sorry.
And does she need your permission to do that?
Oh,
There you go. There we go.
There we go.
Okay. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so first off, of course, we will look at the current PUD logo. The larger is what came in the brand kit, and the bottom logo is what you see on the website and other shared pieces. And so we go into what the Whatcom PUD district is. It's an older PUD. A good, strong history there. That is one of the things that we were very interested in carrying through with the logo was its history, its strong past with an eye moving forward. And we have a hierarchy of words, keywords that are used in the logo. We wanted the PUD as the strong base with Whatcom at the top. We didn't want to include all of the other words. Whatcom Public Utility District, #1, it's repetitive. You want to try to keep logos as simple as possible.
And Heidi, could you go back to that just a minute?
Yep.
I was going to say, we had quite a bit of discussion of it. And there is a tendency in logo design when you start out to do absolutely everything and include every word just to make sure it can't get mistaken with anything else. But in reality, we're the PUD and we're in Whatcom, and it didn't feel like it was important for us to spell out public utility district or number one or add Whatcom County or that sort of thing. So it felt like simplifying it, like you said, Heidi, made more sense and made for a much bolder appearance to it. So anyway, Steve, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that was there was a fair amount of discussion moving in that direction.
No, the only thing I would say is that we had a lot of discussion about whether or not to highlight and emphasize Whatcom. And there's always, in my experience, there's been a long history of when we highlight or we emphasize Whatcom, that people tend to consider us part of the Whatcom County government. And so we wanted to start de-emphasizing that and really speak to the identity of the district rather than a connection to Whatcom County government. Not that that's a negative, that that relationship is assumed, but I think it has always clouded the question of who we really are, what government are we really part of. So
Great.
And so with all logos, we are interested in including visual elements. Some of the elements we considered, of course, was energy and what energy looks like visually. Also regional markers such as mountains and especially water. Those markers, those regional markers are what a lot of municipality logos use. A lot of, there's a sense of place, there's a sense of pride. So a lot of people use those visual markers. So we looked at that, we studied that as well. The mountains, the river, the sky, the sun, all of it. What makes Whatcom County unique? Going into color palette, there's the clean air, water, land, of course, blue, green. There are other colors you can use, but you don't want to bring in too many colors into a logo. You want to keep it as simple as possible. And then we get into typography. That's always part of a logo that you can spend a lot of time on. With the history of this PUD, we wanted it to be solid and bold, a stable font, nothing that is trendy, nothing soft, with PUD as the visual foundation of this logo. It needed to be bold.
And this is a difficult balancing point, I think, when you get into it, is how do you make something look forward-looking, but also stable and well-grounded at the same time? I mean, at the end of the day, our customers and the public depend on us for solid and stable services. That is priority one. And yet, we don't want it to look so staid that it doesn't grow over time, but by the same time, you don't want it to look too trendy because those things have a tendency to age out really early on. So that's kind of the balancing act in this exercise.
Logos are tough, and fonts typography can be very trendy. We all know what Helvetica looks like, and that is a font I started working with back in the day when I was working at an engineering firm. It was Helvetica and Palatino. Those you can always count on. However, they can also look stale depending on how you use those fonts. So it's good to look at a sans serif and a serif font. Those are the two base fonts, no script. So that's where we started. We, of course, did our research on other PUD logos. This shows you a good example of 4 different types of PUD logos. You can kind of see a common theme here. The Snohomish is probably the most different logo, I would say. But it also looks quite dated. You can see the next column, there's an energy burst. You see that through PUD logos throughout. We get into a swirling kind of northwest water icon. Water is a strong theme here. And then, of course, at the right, this is going into a common theme with a lot of, like I said, a lot of municipality logos, trying to throw everything into a logo. We saw it here in Bellingham. I can't remember 15 years ago when they were first reworking the logo. The old logo of Bellingham even shows it more. Once you get these logos into a tiny scale, they become a smudge, almost like a fingerprint, because there's just too much involved. That Tillamook, if you get that logo too small, the Northern Water, that one is a very dangerous logo because of all of the screening and the colors. It's hard to see. So these are a good look at logos in general as well. I highly advise not throwing too much into a logo. It needs to be scalable. It needs to be, not too wide, not too tall. It needs to be able to show in grayscale, in black and white, a single color, 2 colors. It needs to age well. And it can have branding that goes along with it that helps bring out the personality of that logo more.
I think, yeah, this is a good slide. I look at, like Kittitas PUD and definitely, Water Mountain Sun. I mean, that is a kind of a repeating theme here. And then on the bracketed on the other side, the PUD, having grown up in Snohomish County, I remember that logo when I was a kid. So that hasn't gone far. And then the one in the middle, like Chelan County, I don't want to pick on counties, but I'm wondering what significance the horse in the water has, what meaning that actually has. I mean, I know that they're a big hydroelectric utility, so it probably made sense, but it doesn't really have a message, I think, of what they are all about.
Well, Jeff, Commissioner, that refers to one of the dams that they own.
Oh, is that right? And is that dam named after a horse?
I couldn't tell you that, but I think it is. I think Brian, you're on. Is that the name of one of the dams that Chelan owns? No, Brian's not on. Okay. Anyway.
Well, to show you confusion, I thought it was representative of that statute that you see on the hillside above Vantage, but that may not be in Chelan County.
Yeah. That's what I thought when I first saw it as well.
I thought it meant horsepower.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Horsepower.
Oh, it is. Okay.
So all of these logos, you can see they don't represent something unique to those PUDs. Most of them have some water theme. They include their mountains. They include their sense of place, which there is pride in that. And I understand that, but it doesn't make for a unique logo. And those logos hold you in place through your future and the history as well. So it doesn't provide any room to grow. It's that. Oops.
Heidi, was this where we were stopping and getting comments?
We were stopping originally with the typography.
Okay. I maybe just want to ask if there are any comments by either Atul or Mike.
No, nothing from me.
Okay. Mike, how about you?
Nothing for me at this moment.
Okay, great.
Great.
Please proceed, Heidi.
Okay. So here we start getting into the design of the logo. We looked at energy. That was one of the themes that we were all very interested in. We wanted to update the colors, make it a little brighter, a little more exciting. This is also where we took a look at the fonts available to us. Did we want to go with a serif? Did we want to go with a sans serif? At this point in the study, we all agreed that we liked the PUD font. That was solid. That was exactly what we were looking for. So that we landed on that pretty quickly. And again, looking at energy, how does energy look visually? This was our next step, simplifying the color theme, playing with those waves a little bit more, bringing the original waves, energy waves, water waves, into the logo on the right. Just continuing to play with these designs. Again, playing with these designs, bringing in a bar at the top, something that could hold it in place as a logo, playing with the shape of that bar. Still playing with the font, we're narrowing it down to a serif font for Whatcom and what that looks like.
And Heidi, I might mention too, you notice in previous images, the waves were more, I guess, reflective of water waves. This one on the left is kind of could be interpreted as turbulent waters, so we didn't know if that was the right message, whereas the one on the right is more kind of this wavy pattern. But then if you go forward in the next slide, you'll see that what's introduced now are waves that are less flowing and some that actually have some peaks to them, which you know, we thought probably could reflect energy sine waves or maybe has a little bit more of a connotation of that energy and water that we're all about.
And what those waves become towards the top is the mountain range. So this is the mountain. This is where you start to bring in sense of place. And these waves are energy, water, and mountains. So it includes all of the visual elements that we considered before. This is where we landed. And we'll show you the background of all of this. But as we studied this logo, we kept finding that this was the solid place where we came to. And what we're always interested in with a logo is making it simple, again, so it can be represented in a very small size or a very large size. And I'll go into the branding after we look at this, but this is an important spot. And this is where I land for discussion to open it up for us before we go into the rest of the branding. But the logo is the Whatcom PUD, that's the energy waves, the water, the mountain range is there at the bottom. That is part of your branding. So the logo is on its own, lives on its own. The branding are the waves that you see at the bottom and imagery. So depending on depending on if it's an ad, if it's a truck, if it's a business card, you can marry this visual of those sound waves with the logo when you need. Also bringing in photography. It all is part of your branding. And what is good about branding is the logo stays solid for 20 years, but the branding can update itself as you need to. As the PUD moves forward, you can update your branding. You can update that branding with new colors, with new imagery, whatever, but the logo will stay solid, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So At this, I want to ask for comments again. The next section shows how this might be applied in various mediums, but want to kind of get a sense of any reaction to this. Is, as Heidi has pointed out at the beginning, you know, the success of the logo in a very simple form through colors and type of fonts and things like that creates a clear message, but it doesn't draw on any kind of imagery that we saw in some of the other logos that got a little bit more complex. But it's the waves at the bottom that can be applied to provide a second layer of identity to this. So I just wanted to get a sense or general comments from Mike and Atul or others, or we could just move on so we could see how this might get applied in various locations. Atul, do you have any comments at this point?
Wait until I see the whole presentation.
Mhm.
Mike, same thing?
I agree with all two, yes.
I think that's
Okay.
good. Okay.
Let's keep
moving
moving.
on. Okay. So we get into stationery and what those waves might look like included that branding. Right now we're looking at a very simple 2-color brand, that brighter blue and the gray. Part of your identity package could include some other colors to include with your brand, some accent colors. Truly, logos are not as stagnant as they used to be. So that brand can make logos have a little more life to it, and that brand can change. So I'm going to keep repeating that because I think it's important. Signage. This is in the conference room. This could be a 3-dimensional sign, and then those waves could be a vinyl that go along that base there. Signage on the outside. This could be lit from behind. That is where we would definitely work with a sign company to try to make it as exciting as possible on that building, make it noticeable. So I have 2 of these designs. We haven't looked at what we would choose, but one includes the Public Utility District #1 of Whatcom County. Depending on your usage, depending on how you are including the logo, you legally have to include Public Utility #1 of Whatcom County on some items like your business card. I don't know if you need to use it on this sign, but also include the address, of course. Trucks. Keep it simple with the lower one, which is Whatcom PUD, or you could include those sound waves, or not sound waves, excuse me, energy waves, water waves, mountain range, and that lower area of the truck, just to bring that element in there. Doesn't need to be included on all of the trucks, maybe just some. Hats. This was a priority for all of us, was how this logo might be embroidered on a hat. I think it's pretty sharp. It's very readable, and that brings in more of that branding just in the color. Safety vests. I recommend that the PUD is printed in a reflective ink. A study of what this logo looks like on different backgrounds. It has, #1, it has to be usable. It has to be practical. Whatcom PUD.
Very good. Thanks, Heidi.
Sure.
You know, as I mentioned, the intent was not to take it too far until we got input from the balance of the commission, and yet oftentimes you have to take it far enough to understand how a logo can be used in various formats. I know from experience that sometimes the basic geometry of the logo can make it more difficult to use. For instance, if it's a really linear, long, horizontal logo, it doesn't fit various applications like on vests and things because the fonts get so small. What this does is makes it more of a square or kind of a short rectangle. So being able to see how it applies in different areas, I think makes it much more versatile and one that we could probably live with in a long time. But by the same token, we may want to go back to the slides of the early exploration of the logos to take a look at those and begin a discussion about that. So anyway, that concludes this presentation, but I wanted to elicit any comments from Mike and Atul at this point, and get a sense of what your reaction is to this so far.
I'm totally open to the conversation and curious about this whole effort. And I've got some friends and colleagues who understand this subject of branding. I'd like to be able to discuss this subject with them before providing any real comments. So maybe we can discuss this at a future meeting.
Great. Certainly can, and this whole presentation can be sent along so you have that accessible.
Yes, I can send you a PDF if you need to share it.
That would be great because, yeah, and I wanted to ask about that. Obviously, there's copyright stuff like that. I don't know who owns this work.
It's PUD.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, I'm interested in that, and then having a chance. I wasn't aware of this until it came up in the last meeting on the agenda. So I think it's important how we relate to the community. So this can be a part of that. So.
And one of the things I want to offer, I say this to all of my clients when considering a logo, is remember your gut feeling about the logo as it's presented to you. This is important, especially as we were going through the initial designs, when we were looking at 5 designs at a time. What is your gut? Like, which one are you attracted to first? As we go through the process, I always ask my clients to go back to that gut feeling, because that is what people are seeing also, that first initial viewing. So do consider that. Also, this concept will be shared with a lot of people, but I also ask that you be careful who you share it with, by whose opinion you respect. So Atul, I agree with you, showing it to people who understand branding and logo design. I think that's a good idea. I have experienced logo design in the past where a logo design has been offered to friends, to colleagues. Just be careful of that, because everyone has their opinion. And my experience truly has been, it's roughly 50-50 people liking it or dislike or not liking the logo. So just keep that in mind as well. You're not going to please everyone, but I strongly urge to consider your gut feeling. And I'm open. I want to hear all of it. I am not afraid of critiques. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, any comments, any initial reactions?
Yeah, I have a few there, Jeff. I realize branding is very difficult. Coming up with just the right logo. I understand what Heidi's saying about your gut feeling. One thing I will start off with is the Whatcom PUD, as it is presented right before me. It doesn't jump out at me. I want something that's really going to identify us in not in a way of. Originally, when they started talking about this, I thought, oh, we live in the most beautiful place, not only in Washington State, but probably in the world. I love Whatcom County. And, you know, I can look one way and see mountains and the other way and see San Juan. I mean, it's just beautiful here. I wanted that to be put in a logo in the first time, but I realized that after I thought about it, it was just getting too complicated. I wanted a simple message about who we were, and what I was suggesting was just too much. So I'm not really into waves or lightning bolts or transmission towers or anything else. I want to keep it simple. So I kind of like the simplicity right now. I will say that the colors don't jump out at me. They're just to excuse the expression, blah. I want to be able to jump out. I want people to look at it and catch it with their eye. Whatcom PUD as it is in blue and gray doesn't catch my eye. The other thing we have to realize, and then this is how I was introduced to the Public Utility District, is what is a PUD? I'm a member of the Whatcom PUD. A lot of people do not know what PUD stands for. We know, but a lot of people don't. So I really don't think we're identifying ourselves very well by just saying Whatcom PUD. So I don't know how to fix that. That's not my area of expertise. But right now, the colors aren't jumping out at me. I don't find it very attractive, and I don't know what else can be done. I'm just telling you what my gut feeling is.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, good. Well, thank you for those comments. Steve, did you have anything that you wanted to add at this point, or defer to a later meeting?
I'm sorry, I was muted. I don't have anything to add other than I think we should take a a pause on this, get as Commissioner Deshmani indicated, he would like to pass this by some of his colleagues and put this on the agenda, say maybe the second meeting in August.
Sure.
And so, I think that maybe, our discussions over the next couple of weeks with our special session next week and our budget discussions in the first week of August, that might bring some additional thought to, all three of the commissioners on this discussion. So I would just suggest we take some time and, give us that, maybe that second meeting in August to bring this back.
Okay, and one question is, do any of you know which PUD has most recently revisited the subject of branding, or a PUD who I can reach out to, whose work you in investigating it appreciated and would like more information on? So I'll tend to follow up with the association first, but I'm wondering, has there been any dialogue with any other PUDs or anyone that you'd like to know more about?
You know what? I would suggest we can, Ann can contact the PUD Association and ask that very question. In the last 2 years, 3 years, which PUDs have looked at changing their logo there and gone through this effort. I think there has been about 3 or 4 of them actually in the last, maybe not 2 years, but in the last 5 years that have changed their logos. So why don't we gather that input and get that back out to you?
Great, thank you.
Very good. Well, Heidi, I think, let's see, I think you have sent this presentation to Ann already, correct?
Yes, I did remove a logo from the PUD collection because it was repeated. So Ann, let me get you another copy of the PDF.
And then Ann, you could send it out to us as well, and we'll plan to bring this back on our second meeting in August then.
Great.
Very
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you. Good work.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for being with us, and thanks for your work on this, Heidi. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Very good. All right, let's go ahead and move on to approving professional surveying and engineering services agreement. Who is taking, is this Brian?
That's Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Good morning, commissioners. Our standard agreement for professional surveying and engineering services allows for an initial term of 3 to 5 years, and then there is an option to extend the agreements for additional 2 one-year periods. Our previous, or our current engineering services agreement with Pacific Surveying and Engineering, we've exercised both of the 2 one-year extensions. We're at the end of that second one-year extension. Thereby, we're asking for approval of a new professional surveying and engineering services agreement with PSE. PSE, as did a number of other engineering firms, submitted qualifications under our process earlier this year to establish a new roster for services. And they are one of the qualified firms on that roster. And we have a number of projects coming up that we believe PSE has the expertise to assist us with. If this agreement is approved, we anticipate the first work order under the new agreement with PSE would be to assist us with an extension of the potable water and fire water system mains at Grandview. PSE has a lot of experience and knowledge regarding our Grandview system. With that, I'll stop and be glad to answer any questions.
So we'll take these in 2 separate actions. One is to approve the PSA, and then the other would be to approve for the first work order, number 1.
Commissioners, I also wanted to note one change that we'll have to make to the term of the agreement. As I'm counting on my fingers, under the action item, under the second paragraph on background, it states that the agreement would extend through December 31st, 2025. That should actually be 2024. And we make that change where it shows up under the term section of the agreement itself.
Okay. Very good. Is there any discussion? Let's conduct the decision on the PSA first. Is there any discussion on that?
Not for me. I can make a motion to approve this if you wish.
That would be great. Thank you, Mike.
Then let's go ahead. I'll make a motion to approve the standard agreement with PSE for their services.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the professional services and engineering agreement with PSE to extend through December of 2024. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That is carried. Then we'll move on to the work order. And thank you for providing the breakdown on their services as well. So this first work order would be the amount of $29,070. Is there any further discussion on that?
None from me.
Would you like to make that motion again, Mike?
I will make the motion to approve work order number 1 with Pacific Survey and Engineering for $29,070.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded to approve the work order number 1 with PSE. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that is carried as well. Thanks very much. We will move on to the general manager report.
Commissioners, I just have just one update, if you would, on working with the Port of Bellingham and Whatcom County on the use of both federal stimulus money related to COVID-19 and also the opportunity to work with the school districts in the county on finding resources for purchasing equipment and connectivity in terms of hotspots, for providing access for students to the internet. Commissioner McClure has been working with a group represented by County Council Member Rudd Brown in identifying opportunities to use some of the stimulus money that's been allocated to Whatcom County for that purpose. And the amount of money that was identified, Gina Stark at the Port of Bellingham has really been the lead on this connection to the school districts. But the identified need was about $3 million. And so the Commissioner McClure and that group led by County Council Member Rudd Brown had indicated put that kind of a request or that level of request into the county to allocate funds out of that. I think they're expecting to get something around $12 million in stimulus money. And so that request was put in. It's my understanding that as of this last week that the county is expected to allocate only about $500,000 out of that stimulus package for this purpose. And so the Port of Bellingham and Gina specifically, we've been having discussions about finding other resources to try to bring that amount of money up to assist the school districts. And so she has identified a USDA grant that would provide up to $1 million to supplement that $500,000 that is expected to come from the county now. So we've indicated that $1 million grant requires a 15% local match. And so we've indicated, after my discussion with each of you commissioners, we've indicated that we, along with the port and the county, would provide that needed local match. So right now, USDA is indicating that application was sent in last Friday, and USDA is indicating that they see that receiving a favorable approval rating by USDA for that funding. So we're working with Gina on that. And then also yesterday, the Public Works Board at the state of Washington came out with a notification that there's going to be up to $18 million available for broadband resources in the next, I think it's 90 days. And we've been having discussions with, again, with Gina at the port, and she plans on providing an application through the Public Works Board for another $2 million to supplement not only a portion of this immediate need for education support, but also how it may tie into their first segment of their fiber network project that they're moving ahead with. So that's what I have.
Steve, on that last subject, I was reading on this that came out from the county yesterday, and it's 18 million. 9 million is grant, and the other 8.6 million statewide. I'm sorry, 8.6 in grants, 9.1 in low interest loans, and we have to make application by September 9, but there's a provision in here that if you're intending to make an application, you have to notify all the affected ISPs 6 weeks in advance. So there's kind of a 3-week window here to make that application. So you have to notify them 6 weeks in advance before. So I don't know what all of that means, but I suspect that Gina's on top of all of this.
We were, at my understanding, I participated last week in 2 of those, if you would, contacts and discussions with ISPs. And yes, she is on this, that meeting those criteria before the formal application is sent in. Yes.
Great, good. Well, and we'll get more information on that next week when she's attending our workshop.
Yes.
Cool, very good. Good, anything else?
That's all I had at this point, Commissioners.
Okay. Yeah, John?
Yes, I sent each of you a copy of the interview with Director Watson that was in the water report, which is a bi-monthly publication that I receive. So that PDF should be in each of your email inboxes at the PUD email address.
Great, thanks. We'll move on to commissioner reports. Commissioner Murphy, do you have anything you'd like to bring up?
I don't. I'm trying to honor Altul's request to be done by 10. We still have an executive session, so I'm going to pass.
Okay. Atul, how about you?
I'll also defer any extensive comments. So appreciate all the work Steve has done on these grants and being responsive in such short time frame. I think that's really exemplary. And I want to say to everybody that even though she's not an employee of the PUD, I'm proud of Gina Stark. She's just an example of really exceptional person in public in the public role. So
Very good. If there are no other reports from the commission, then we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment today?
Let's see, it looks like Rick has a question. Rick?
Well, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Rick.
The only comment is on the meeting policy that was adopted earlier. One piece of that, folks might misinterpret it. And that's the part that if too many people show up at a meeting, that the public will be excluded. That might be misinterpreted by some, is that the PUD could simply pack the meeting with staff and thus exclude the public.
Okay. Good comment.
Yeah, good comment.
yeah.
John, do you have some modified language in mind that you would propose?
Well, I will say that staff will excuse themselves from the meeting before the public and just do a prioritization.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Rick. Is there anyone else?
We have
Have a
Max.
good morning.
You too.
Okay, we have an unidentified caller, 916 area code.
All right.
I'm Kathy Sable. Am I being heard now?
Yes.
I just had a clarification question on what's happening on the Wyver regional water supply plan that PUD 1 is the lead on. Do you discuss it at these commission meetings, and is all the work on the Wyver website, or is it both on the PUD 1 website additionally?
We have not placed it specifically on the PUD website. We just retain that connection on our website, a link to the Wyver 1 website. And so we haven't added anything specifically on any of those topics if they're being worked on under the Watershed Management Board.
And so you don't even discuss it at the PUD 1, these meetings. It's only discussed at the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Christine, I think Christine has her hand up. No. Christine,
Almost.
you're,
Yeah, can you hear me?
yes, we
Yes.
can now.
Okay,
More-
great. Yeah, so I just wanted to suggest that these recordings be made available to the public. It looks like they've been recorded on Zoom, but just because of the challenges that everyone is going through with COVID, I know a lot of other commissions and councils provide recordings of their meetings in addition to the written meeting notes. So just wanted to offer that suggestion.
We are recording this meeting, Christine. This is the first one, and the link will be put up on our website.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Steve, before the next comment, I'm back to Kathy Sable's comment. I would just clarify, maybe you can clarify the comment about the water system plan or the draft water system plan. It's not presented for a regular discussion on the commission agenda, but it may come back and a report at a later time. So there could be a discussion at a later agenda
Oh,
at
yes.
some point. Yeah.
And any action that requires a position, a policy position by members of the Watershed Management Board on the water supply plan itself would have to be brought back to the individual elected boards like the PUD Commission to set a direction and a vote, if you would, on the planning process. So, and we will typically, as we will on any future grants, we will typically bring, updates when we feel that it's important for the commission to be prepared to take a position or approve a position.
Thanks. I just want to clarify. It wasn't a matter it never would come up. Could be circumstances where it may come up.
Right.
Very
Max
good.
Perry. Oh, sorry. Max, you have a question? Comment? Max?
Max, you're muted.
Hi, it's
Hi, Carol.
Carol Perry. Just wanted to comment on Commissioner Dejmondi's comment about the difficulty of doing things this way. And I was heartened by the fact that all the commissioners really wanted to have a meeting together. And there was an example of this. I think it's really the responsibility. We want to follow the law, right? And you have a legal person there. When the county was presented with taking their case to move to another level, I think it was Erica Lockenbach or whatever her name is, wrote a letter saying the way they were evaluating Whatcom County's situation was not really good or fair or right. And so I think that did yield with elected officials at the state level some consideration. So I think if all the PUDs around the state or more people would appeal to those in elected places, I mean, the few people that come to the PUD meetings, certainly you're creative enough to social distance and so forth. Anyway, as I've said about the PUD, even in relation to Cherry Point, never was PUD at one of the 12 hearings that were carried on in the county. And I think that was a mistake. But anyway, for us trying to participate, like Commissioner Dejmondi said, it's difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Looks like we have another comment from Kathy.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Must have been accidental, but I did want to ask, once you bring back in-person meetings, will you also offer the Zoom?
Yes, that's our intent. That's staff's will be staff's recommendation, and we've as our IT manager Mike McComber indicated earlier, that we have also purchased equipment for our conference room, our PUD Commission conference room, to provide better, if you would, better electronic virtual access, even if we eventually go to open, public meetings, in-person meetings. So that the long answer is yes.
Thank you.
And Steve, for clarity, I think we're discussing phase 3 there, and I don't know the commission has taken a position yet as to if the emergency orders are completely lifted, we're out of the pandemic, would you continue with Zoom? I'm not saying no, I'm just saying that decision hasn't been made yet.
No, but like I said, that is the intention of staff and myself to make that recommendation when we get to that point. Yeah.
Okay, looks like Max has another question or a comment. Carol, Max? No?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you.
We'll lower the.
Thank you. If there's no other public comment, thank you everybody for your participation today. We are going to move into an executive session. John, do you have a sense of the duration of that session?
Roughly 15, let's say 20 minutes just on the outside, more like 10 to 15.
And
we'll
no
say 20 just on the outside, no actions anticipated. Again, the process will be that Mike McCumber will leave this meeting open. We'll all leave. The individual commissioners and staff have an invite to a separate Zoom meeting that I've sent out. When that's over, we'll come back here. Again, no actions anticipated. We're no more than 20 minutes, likely less.
Can we make a 2-minute break? Atul, I know that you're up against a hard stop deadline. 2-minute break and then we'll convene.
Yeah, I can
I'll
get
open
that
it up
email
whenever
off.
you're ready.
Good.